Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 72 of Nutanix Weekly. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I feel like I've been gone for, forever. Philip, you remember the last time I was on one of these?
I don't feel like it's been too many episodes ago, maybe one or two. But that could have been a couple of months too.
Well, life is flying by. It's the voice of Philip Sellers. Philip is doing pretty much everything, all things data center, what I'm starting to call modern data center practice here at XenTegra, which would include Nutanix, the platform, the software, the hardware. Don't get offended, guys, about that hardware comment. I just have to lump it into hardware because you still got a bunch of knuckleheads out there that talk about it being hardware. So don't want to miss their sweet spot. Got Jira Cox with us as always, and Ben Rogers. The two of those are our subject matter expert on all things Nutanix, and glad to have you guys.
Oh, I'm happy to be here.
I'll let Jira take the subject matter expert on all of Nutanix. I'm still learning, man. I have my verticals. There's some parts of it I still have yet to explore.
Yeah, well, what I like about you, Ben, is you always know that you don't know everything. And that's a good sign in the technology space. There's way too many people out there that know it all.
Yeah, no, that's not me, brother. I've been around the block to know there's always more block to explore. So,
yeah, we'll ask you a question, Ben. I was looking at the registrations for our upcoming Nutanix Flow workshop, and I saw you were registered. Was that an accident?
No, I want to attend, man. I want to learn. I also want to see what our partners, how they're delivering the message, because, this is, I try to keep myself very customer centric from my old days. Yeah. So I like to listen to the messaging that we're sending out, but also like to listen to the messaging that the partner's sending out. Also like to hear the questions that customers are asking. And man, there's always more to learn. So, maybe you guys might teach me something as you guys have done it in the field. So no, that's not by accident, my friend.
Well, I love what you said there at the end. Look, I know partners in the Nutanix world add value. I wish we could, be recognized for adding more value. But one thing we do that you can't do working at Nutanix is we're actually using this stuff internally to host ourselves and customers. And you guys have your labs, and I'm sure you use it as a user at Nutanix, but we are actually implementing it for ourselves and customers and for our managed customers. It's when all that comes together, the partner and the vendor and the customer and everybody's learning from each other, that's when things are hitting on all cylinders.
No, so to answer your question, no, that's not by accident, and I'll see you there.
Well, I'm not smart enough to attend, but you'll see Philip there. All right. So Jira brought with him an article, a blog, a something. Jira, what would you call this?
It's definitely a blog post.
Okay. Hold on, I'm pulling it up for us. Sorry.
Or a something. I mean, things can be two things.
All right. It's a blog post from the Nutanix community. That's why it looked a little different to me, but it's from the community blogs, which is probably the best place to get these.
We run 3 different blogs, which, let's say you're a partner hosting a podcast that draws from blog content. That's a really good thing, right? Because that's 3 more sources of content, right? So we've got the main blog, the community blog, where that's where we've pulled episodes from the past around actually similar topic, right? The metro clustering, even for VM compute stuff.
Yeah.
And some folks that have set that up in their home labs. And also the dev blog, right? That's where the really hardcore stuff is on our developer site.
Yeah, they don't let me on that one. All right, so the name of today's blog from 4 days ago, the name of it is Nutanix File Storage Episode 4.4, Synchronous Replication Awakens. I think this has probably been, for some of us, a long time coming, once you explained a little bit about it a while ago. And the author of this blog is Mark W. I guess it's Mark W.A. We'll just call him Markawa for the sake of fun here. So it's a Nutanix employee, it looks like. All right, so Jira, why this blog? Why today? Why'd you bring this blog?
So I'm excited about it, which is always a good high-level filter for podcast topics. It makes me happy, right? So I've had customers running Nutanix files back in the day, known as AFS, right? Acropolis File Services, something. Thankfully, we added some marketing to that, and Nutanix files is more understandable. Since day one, even longer than I've been at Nutanix, I've had a customer running Nutanix files from the day that we first GA'd it. And this enhancement that we've shipped here in 4.4 is like chock full of goodness. It is genuinely a actually exciting release. But this one feature itself is by far the standout feature of like now we'll get into it, but like now we can solve for file server availability across sites, across clusters, even more simply, and keep the business running more of the time.
So I'm gonna hit you with an Andyism. That's what we call them around here. What Andyism? Why do we call it applications?
Because they're applied to solve a problem.
Yeah, exactly. We're applying software. That's really good. That's a really good answer. And the same reason. Usually, I follow that up with why do we call putting fertilizer on our grass an application? Because we're applying something to fix it and make it better. The whole world of IT revolves around getting applications into the hands of end users, right?
Right. No, sorry, I'm still floating on my high of getting the trivia question correct. So, that's the highlight of my day right there. I'm telling you.
Right.
And I would argue with anybody that's what we do in IT. But occasionally somebody will tell me it's all about the data, and I can't argue against it. They go together. You have to have the applications, and you have to have the data.
Right.
It's just not gonna work.
I mean, if you cut power to the data center, the data's still sitting there, but it ain't terribly useful.
Yeah. And if you take all the data away from the applications, it ain't useful either.
Yeah.
Ben, what are you hoping to get out of this blog before you pre-read it? So if you have already read it, pre-read it, stop. But what are you hoping to get out of this?
So, Andy, this has been kind of an interesting subject for me over the last couple of weeks because I'm out there talking a lot about our cloud services, how we get people from on-prem to cloud, make that process easy, yada, yada. This subject of I've got multiple files infrastructure, whether it be one of our competitors, of ours, a lot of people are grappling with, I've got multiple panes of glass when it comes to how I'm handling my file systems. And so one of the things I hope to learn today is how can Nutanix kind of consolidate that and make that a simpler window? Andy, this goes back to a problem you and I had to solve at CNSA. We had profiles for Citrix users, and those set in DFS shares, and we had to distribute that across the infrastructure. And more importantly, we had to know where a person's locality was going to be to where they needed that share to be. And that became very cumbersome, And so, again, I look at that problem and I look at other problems that customers have presented to me. And I kind of want to understand how do we make that, as Jaira kind of said in the beginning, a simpler process, easier to understand, bring the Nutanix goodness to the table so that I can learn and pass it to my customers.
As you said that, I looked back at the title of this. I'm going to reread it one time and point out something I screwed up. So it's Nutanix file storage, episode 4.4, synchronous. I'm highlighting the word synchronous versus asynchronous, but synchronous replication that I'm going to say is synchronous replication awakens and just works. That's what I'm hoping I get out of it. It just works, right? We don't have to worry about all that DFS madness from back in the day, and you just kind of hoped it worked. Now we got files going real time across different systems, geographically somewhat dispersed, I guess. But it's good. Thanks, Ben. Philip, what are you hoping to get out of this? What was broken that you hope to find out was fixed?
Well, for me, it's really around that geo kind of redundancy. We got solutions and we've had the ability to do the asynchronous replication, but doing this synchronously with zero loss, I mean, that opens up other use cases. And now I'm just wondering, okay, how fast of a link do I need between the sites to be able to use this? I'm ready to go.
Yep. So, Jaira, whoever wrote this blog didn't break it out into different sections, but I'm going to use the first couple words of each paragraph. The first one talks about the cost of data unavailability can be significant to the business. What does that mean?
I would phrase it as just like we understand that downtime has hard and soft costs, and always is worth minimizing to the maximum realistic degree, right? Which is always a business by business case. Like you make the decision for your business of how painful is my downtime, what I want to invest to make my downtime shorter or build a more resilient solution or automate recovery versus manual recovery and human powered recovery versus processes. But for our customers that have the least tolerance of downtime and the most desire for stuff just fixes itself ASAP when something goes bump, that's what this is all targeted for.
Yeah. And then I'm going to jump you right into the next paragraph that talks about customers need RPOs of zero. Here's one of my favorite and least favorite conversations to have with a customer is what's your recovery point objective and what's your recovery point time, RPO, and our
recovery time
objective.
Yep.
And I have that conversation with IT folks all the time, and they start to answer. And I was like, look, that's not the end. That is not your question to be answered. That is the business's question to be answered.
Right. I was giving you homework. Go ask the business. Yeah.
Go ask the business. And if the business can't tell you, then they can't tell you how to do your job, because you need that feedback. But this is saying zero, like recovery point objective is zero loss. Is that a reality?
Well, and to agree with your point and your point of view, Andy, like until we know what until we know the answer to that question, the business doesn't know what to go by, and we don't know if we're positioning the right solution, right? So, yeah, fully agree with you on that kind of understanding.
Not to interrupt you, Gyro, but there's got to be more of a conversation. And Andy, you were alluding this, but what you got to do is if the business doesn't understand that, in my opinion, it's the IT's leadership to make the business understand that and to ask the questions of them and do the discovery of, what does an RPO or an RTO mean to the business? Because a C-level might be thinking, oh, I can just instantly turn it on. And it's that IT leadership to go, no, there's a process to, one, implement the strategy, and two, there's another process to make sure that strategy is up to date and administrable and executed in a test environment, if needed in a production environment. So it goes a little bit more beyond just, the acronyms or the technology to do that. You have to have a process in the business to do it.
So Philip, you just came over from the business world not that long ago. It is probably, tell me if this is not a true statement. So you go to talk to your leadership about RTO and RPO, and before they answer, you say, now look, but I will need you to know, the lower you make that, the more it's going to cost. I think maybe Gyra is going to tell us that, yes, that still might be true, but the gap is not nearly what it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, and that was actually a great segue into what I was going to say too. I mean, it usually comes down to that financial cost discussion, because you are taking things and layering away from the technology as you get into these business conversations. And generally, if you're having this conversation with a COO and CFO, I was lucky. I had very technical counterparts in the C-suite, but a lot of times those discussions did come back to the money objectives and what's acceptable risk versus what's the capital outlay going to look like, or the operational outlay going to look like. So yeah, I mean, it was very much navigating that, but more in their business language than in IT language. So as someone, as a director in that role, you have to be able to translate those two things together and marry it for different layers of applications too. Not all applications are the same at the end of the day.
Yeah. Right. So, I think the burden lies on the IT practitioner, right? Because they have the understanding, they're at the center of all of the interconnectedness, right? To tell the business, hey, if this thing over here breaks, this technical thing, what you would see is this app, this solution, this portal is down. Do you care? Yes, no. Let's keep talking, right? Because that's where the conversation starts.
So, Gyra, I was somewhat asking a minute ago if you were going to be able to say yes to that problem's been solved and it's cost effective, but the blog says it. Yes, this capability is now built into our already mature and customer validated Metro offering that has been around for years.
Yes, this capability is built on our already mature and customer. Yes.
All right. So instead of cutting you off on and on and on throughout this blog, I'm going to let you roll through how it works, even the diagram here, and then let Philip and Ben jump in and beat you up on some of the technicalities. Go.
Sure, let's do it. So if you don't know about Nutanix files, right, we deploy a set of virtual machines, right, on a cluster, which is what we do, right? We run the applications that run the business, which include virtual machines and include data management. We deploy a cluster of those virtual machines, right, more than one, to run as a file server, right? So from an Active Directory perspective, you would see maybe one file server that maybe on our end is maybe, let's say, 3 virtual machines, right? So we want to have resiliency and parallelism in that workload. So we're running these 3 virtual machines that are serving as file servers to the business, right? So products are part of solutions. Maybe the solution to your business is running, like, say, VDI. VDI is often a critical application, right? It could be powering the end users that are literally talking to customers or doing patient care or whatever. They've got data, right? So they have user profiles, they've got their own just like desktop data, my documents, whatnot. That has to live somewhere, typically, and we're not going to go deep on VDI because XenTegra can do that all day, every day. That's one thing you guys are fantastic at. with that, you guys know that, my end users need to store their stuff somewhere, their profiles somewhere. File server is a great place to do that. Before now, we would say, hey, great, you're going to write that to a file server at the production cluster. Let's say you're doing Raleigh for production and Charlotte for DR. Then you're going to write that data to Raleigh when your users are there. And then we will replicate that data over to the Charlotte cluster for DR, let's say once an hour, right? And you would look at me and say, well, Jairo, what if I lose my Raleigh cluster and I want to recover? What happens? Well, your users all go back in time up to 1 hour, right? So that could be impactful, right? With this now, what we'll do is we'll write that data to a place where on the cluster, where we'll replicate that synchronously to another secondary cluster. So, and you're calling out correctly here, right? So there's laws of physics that govern this, right? We can't go around the world with this because, we like to think we're a very premium, very performant solution. If you tell us that I'm going to run copy A, not in Raleigh, but copy B, not in Charlotte, but in Singapore, then every single write that I ever generate has to go around the globe literally and then come back for an acknowledgement. And I've now chained my rocket ship to the pad, and it just can't go very fast, right? So there's a limit here published, right, that the upper boundary for latency from that production site to the DR site is 5 milliseconds. Now take that for what it is. That's the upper boundary guidance. In actuality, we want that to be as close to zero as possible, right? So this is commonly more of like a dark fiber or very high-speed link or like cross a city, not cross a state, cross a country type of deployment.
So Jairo, I said I would let the other two guys, and I promise I will, but it needs to be less than 5 milliseconds, and it should be redundant fiber, right?
That could be a design decision. I could see it being a single link if you wanted it to, because we're going to build the solution to tolerate one loss of anything, right? One loss of a site, one loss of a node, one loss of a link, perhaps, right? So you could be at n+0 on your WAN links, and that would be defensible. Of course, you're right. More redundancy is better.
Yeah. Okay. Philip, Ben, you want to beat him up? Now I got him to stop for a second. Not that he doesn't do a good job of that, but he does. Go ahead.
The one thing that I'm kind of questioning looking at the diagram is I see this witness in here, Jairo. Give me a little idea of what that witness is doing. Is that the kind of repository that we're laying in to be able to do the synchronization between the two clusters? Or that's the one thing I kind of see that's a little odd to me up front.
Yeah, so this is built on the platform of Nutanix Metro clusters, which we've had, that's been GA, I don't know, 8-9 years, long time. And so what we've always had in our design for doing a Metro cluster is the concept of a witness, because let's say, to Andy's point, if I have one link of fiber from prod to DR and that link goes dark, how do I have my clusters rationalize to themselves, hey, is this a split brain scenario, or did the other side go dark? Because if I'm, let's say, the Charlotte cluster and I can't reach the Raleigh cluster, is that a WAN failure, or did Raleigh just lose power? Right? Or I said that backwards, but you know what I mean. So how do I help a site understand, am I split brained or am I the survivor? The witness serves that role, right? That's the quorum maintainer, the split brain breaker. So if I can see the witness and I can't see my partner site, then I know I'm the survivor and I should auto activate. Or the witness will tell me. If the witness can see both, it'll say, you're the winner. You either keep running the workload or you recover the workload. So the witness is always there as that split brain keeper of the peace. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And I mean, you also alluded to the fact this is the same concept of the witness that we have in our other Metro offerings. So this is, again, just bringing some more of the Nutanix goodness to the table and some of our other pillars of products that we have. Right.
It's not necessarily a new capability from us as a data platform. It's a new supportability for a solution, in this case being Nutanix files. We've had this for VMs for forever. And really part of what this is involving is synchronous storage for volume groups, right? Which is our block storage construct, which is what files really writes onto. That was sort of the last shoe to drop before now the full stack solution of Nutanix files now supports Metro clustering.
See, to me, if I was a Nutanix engineer at a company, I would feel good about this because, one, I could look at my leadership and go, hey, I already understand this. This is just them building out more into their product set.
Yeah, totally. Right. In some ways, that's a great point, Ben. Like nothing here is totally new. It's a new recipe of mature ingredients, which ingredients shouldn't be mature when you're really cooking for real. But in this case, it's a good thing. Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
Hey, Tyra, well, Philip, you had a comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was actually thinking about the networking layer here, and I had questions around, how do you need your network laid out for this? Is this going to be like a stretched layer 2 across the two sites? Is it going to be something where you also need to layer in flow networking, or that kind of thing? Because that's been my difficulty in running metro type availability in the past.
Sure. So yes to the question about stretch layer 2, because, right, think about the recovery mechanisms here. And to be totally explicit here, this is coming first to ESXi, and the document calls out that AHV support is on the roadmap and coming quickly. So, or delivering as quickly as possible. But for the total 1.0, this is on ESXi. And so with ESXi, right, we're using the built-in hypervisor HA mechanism. So when one site is observed to be dark, the other site recovers those workloads as a standard VM HA operation. And as such, there's no place to inject or monkey with the in-guest IP address. It's got to be resuscitated as it was last running. So that's why we need stretch layer 2, because it's going to come up with whatever hard code or IP addresses it already had at the other site. So yeah, we need the IP portability from site to site, which also actually answers your other question, Philip, of when we're running on vSphere, then no, we're not talking about adding flow networking to this solution.
Right.
Tyra, why now? I mean, was it just a matter of getting the code smart enough to be able to do this successfully?
Yeah, technically everything is just a matter of getting the code smart to do anything, I guess, really, for a software company. But you're right. I think the last shoe to drop here, right, like I said, was that synchronous replicated storage for block volumes, right, which is what files really writes data to and at the persistent layer. So once we had that real data, right, because the file VMs themselves, they're more like a protocol adapter at the front end. They're just doing that SMB or NFS handshake, but then really data stored outside that VM on the cluster itself. So we had to have that data be synchronous and then available to VMs that wanted to come up on the other side. And once we had that, then really this is using a lot of prior art, if you will, from our Metro solutions.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Tyra, we get it. Like the picture helped immensely. Your description helped immensely. What haven't you covered? What's all this trying to tell me?
So this is showing, using a lot of accurate diagrams here, what's happening to my data when I want to write it, right? So I want to write a Word document into my home directory, which stores in my profile, which is stored on a file server. So I save my Word document. Where does it go? Well, I want to write that to, let's keep my Charlotte and Raleigh construct. I'm running in Raleigh today. So I save that desktop to the Raleigh file server. That gets written in Raleigh in two places, right? Because let's say we're running the out-of-the-box Nutanix configuration. It's called RF2, write data twice. Then we also split that write over to the other site, over to Charlotte. That data then gets written there twice as well. So I've got RF2 on both sides. We're not doing RF2 across sites, right? Because then if I had that WAN split or a site go dark, I'd have one copy of data. That's not really enough for my comfort level, right? So we have really redundant copies of your data so that we can lose a copy and still have the two copies that you've declared to be your policy for data storage. All four of those writes occur before it's acknowledged back to me, the user, of, yeah, your Word document got saved successfully. So as I'm doing my file save in Word, if I see like a progress bar, something like that, that progress bar is covering everything I just said. If it's saving all four of those copies of there, of course, invisibly to the end user, before it's acknowledged back to the guest OS that I'm running in, that job's all done.
Yeah. And as we've been talking through this, I'm envisioning files happening this way, but maybe not databases, like unless they were like flat file databases, like old school ones.
So actually, like we've been doing this for anything in a vDisk on ESXi for a very long time, like 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So yeah, actually, totally, if you can, right? If you can fit it in a vDisk, and of course now actually with SyncRep for block storage as well, then yeah, we can absolutely do this. And again, like we kind of alluded to earlier, laws of physics still apply. So the distance from your prod to your DR site, the quality of that link there is going to affect the performance that you as the end user perceive there. Yeah. But that can be pretty close to zero if I've got dark fiber from site to site.
Yeah. All right, Philip and Ben, Jibber said a bunch of smart guy stuff. Thoughts?
Oh, I think it's awesome, man. I think, the what's really got me intrigued here is the ability to say to a company, hey, we can get your file systems collapsed, consolidated, but then we can also seamlessly replicate that to another cluster if you need be, whether that cluster be on-prem, third party, is yet to be seen, as far as where the customer's needs are. But I think it's a great jump in technology. And I also think that it's cool that it's built upon what our customers are already going to know. So the learning curve on this, I think, is going to be small for most customers that are already using our replication technology.
Yeah. Philip, anything?
Yeah, I mean, this hits a particular use case, but I can envision other places. I know that you've typically partnered with a company that does active when you've got asynchronous replication across sites. Looking at this, I still see a need for that sort of use case where you got the active type stuff happening across longer distances.
Totally. I can absolutely picture that, right? Like a near far construct where I'm doing sync rep from A to B, and then, like you said, asynchronous from B to C, and C can be way farther away.
Yeah, I see this, applicable for campuses, colleges, universities, municipalities, lots and lots of use cases where those types of institutions and organizations have the resources we're talking about with dark fiber and their own networking, and they have the facilities and the campus to be able to pull this off. Enterprise customers probably not quite as interested unless they've got large research campuses or manufacturing campuses and things like that.
Totally. Yeah, it totally depends on the requirements there for sure. And to stay in that thread, like what it's not, like we're not replacing backup here, right? We're not replacing recovery from farther back, right? Like this is built to do one thing really well, and that is if a site loses power or suffers some other site denial event, right? WAN link inoperability. I want that workload to recover at a surviving site as quickly as possible with zero human intervention, right? Like we're basically back online by the time someone fully understands what the alert says. That level of recovery, right? But if it's like, I need to go back in time 7 days, right, to before a ransomware event, or I need to go back and retrieve data from 3 years ago from a backup, right, for governance reasons, all solved with partner software, right? And we've got fantastic partners in that space. So yeah, it's one. I'm multiply taking a lot of words to agree with you. It's one dimension of availability we can now solve for, but there are other dimensions that are also very, very important for a full solution.
Yeah.
Jaira, I have a question, and I'm officially taking my Nutanix representative hat off and putting on my customer hat. I'm reading, man, that this is ESXi only. You've explained that AHV is coming soon, which would give me a great thrill. Does AHV coming soon mean that this will be coming to something like NC2?
The one thing to think about there, right, is that almost nobody lives within 5 milliseconds of the cloud. So I would think of this more, and usually with NC2, we do a separate qualification process to make sure, like, hey, we've tested it. We actually ran it on NC2 to give customers that, like extra degree of comfort that like we've tested it. We don't just trust that it works on NC2. So usually you'll find in the release notes for NC2, there's a separate qual process that will publish, like, what have we tested lately solution-wise in there. But this, I would think, actually is more pertinent for like a cloud availability zone to a cloud availability zone, not from me to a cloud, unless I live really near a cloud data center and I have an amazing ISP.
Okay. Cool.
Hey, Jared, help us understand this table here at the bottom. It's got AOS replication and then data service granularity. Help just, I guess, describe the table to our listeners, and those watching online later can see it. But what's the point in this table?
It's the table is talking about various kinds of recovery we can do and ways we can protect a file server. So the first one there AOS replication, that's our typical Nutanix storage snapshots that we can send anywhere. The files has had that from day one, from a snapshot it here, send it anywhere else, recover anywhere else. Longer process, right? Now I can send it anywhere. I can send that around the world. Maybe take, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes to get it back online when I start the recovery process. So longer RTO, longer RPO as well, actually. But it does protect the entire file server, right? So then SmartDR protects the file share, right? I might have one share I care about and 9 that I don't, right? Or 9 that I don't need to bring up in a DR event, just my critical data. So we can replicate a share itself, which is not what we've been talking about today, but this table's showing the family portrait of what we can do. So I can protect a share and send that share contents anywhere. That's also asynchronous, to another file server I run on another cluster in another availability zone or other data center. Joining the family now, right, is Metro cluster, now running that file server in synchronous protection with HA as my recovery mechanism, which means no humans have to get involved in that recovery, right? Like by the time that someone reads that alert, it's probably already powered on and getting back to business. And then lastly, Smart Sync is not DR. That's more of I want to do data replication from site to site, and I want to be able to have users that save drawings or blueprints at site A and site B, and then replicate that bi-directionally, maybe, right, from A to B and from B to A, so that everyone gets to think they're working on the same file server, but in reality, I'm actually shipping that data across the wire as it gets written. So also asynchronous there, but that we call it here is more of a consolidation or backup use case, not really DR and not scoped for the file server. That's again at a share level.
So this is my dumb question, and I'm
or a folder level even. Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
I'm supposed to ask the dumb questions. Why not just use the synchronous? Oh, I guess it's a matter of distance. If you don't have the don't have the RTT lower enough round trip times, then you got to use one of the other ones. What do you you're smart guys. What do you ballpark? Like how far apart am I going to be able to be before I get out of 5 millisecond round trip time?
Smarter guys than me have talked about a rule of thumb of around 50 miles.
50 miles. Okay.
Yeah, I've also heard 50 kilometers.
Maybe
it's one of those things. I mean, theoretically, if we were in a vacuum, light speed could be much longer than that, but I've heard 50 kilometers, which is a little shorter than 50 miles, I think.
That's those kinky cables.
Yes.
We don't recommend running files in a vacuum. Please run it in the real world.
What's the best running network ever? The network without users, right?
Oh, that you're talking about a VW van full of SD cards. That's
all right, Jaira.
That's throughput networking.
Bring us home. What well, let me do it differently. Let me go the other way. Philip, did you get what you wanted out of this update?
Yeah, I did. This is great. I mean, I worked in an organization where we did this on Windows with Metro 3-tier. So I would love to be able to do the same thing and have it hyper-converged. So this is a huge win for an organization that's trying to switch off a 3-tier, doing Metro type availability. So I'm loving what I'm hearing today, and look forward to getting a customer where we can try this out.
Well, Philip, if you want to buy one and gift it to your old employer, that's fine. We're here for it.
The pockets don't quite go that deep.
Ben, did you get what you thought you were going to get out of this review of the blog?
Yeah, I mean, I thought this was spot on, and things my customers are asking about. So I appreciate you allowing me to participate and always allowing me to learn, Andy. Thank you.
Dude, thank you for the questions.
And Jaira?
Yes, I got out of this what I wanted to, Andy.
Take it home. I mean, anything you didn't cover that maybe I glossed over or that's not covered here that relates to this topic you want to leave us with?
What I love about this, and really my job, right, is I get to sit with customers and talk about, lead off with what do you need or what are you trying to solve for, and not what do we do, right? So, because there's a lot of ways we can do a lot of things, and let's just say I've been designing Nutanix solutions long enough that wasn't always the case, right? There was kind of one way we could do things. Do you want to buy that or not? But that's not today, right? Today we have such a broad offering and so many capabilities that it's really, really fun to get to be consultative and sit with customers and say, let's solve for what you really want to, from distance, from availability, from what level of touch do you want to have for that recovery operation at 3 a.m, maybe, and really get to design a fun solution for our customers.
Yeah, I love that. It goes hand in hand with why I do the podcast that I lead the way I lead them, and that's because it's tied to a blog, and the blog always has some business outcome that you're trying to observe and trying to solve for, and this clearly solves a business outcome that's been wanted for a while.
It's definitely for a while. It's definitely one of the top feature requests I've ever gotten in my conversations with customers. So I love seeing it here fully GA.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen. Well, I appreciate you joining on a Monday afternoon, and we got another one of these done, and I hope it's valuable to those who listen. Thank you.
Thank y'all.